and welcome back to FTC Features, the podcast where we talk about anything and everything FTC. My name is Louisa, and I'll be your host for today. Our returning host will be Aayush, if you want to say hi.
Hello.
And as you can see, today we do have another co-host on with us. He will be a guest host on this episode, and he is Aarush. If you would like to introduce yourself a little bit.
Hi, I guess that's all.
He will be on this episode specifically since he does know more about CAD than me and Aayush.
We just a reminder that we will be extending our holiday special giveaways to the end of January. So this is a great opportunity to receive free gift cards from popular FTC vendors. So all you have to go is to our holiday special video and then leave a comment down below. That's just going to be that video should be linked like right here. Go down to the comments and then leave a comment saying whether you want, what type of gift card you want. And if you look at the videos, there's 3 different gift cards and your team and your team name and your team number. So we're going to be extending that. So if you want to win one of those extremely nice gift cards, go on over there.
We also have some FTC feature stories for this episode. So Aayush, do you want to start with your feature story?
Yeah. So last time, I think it was in episode 4, we talked about the prank on Louisa. But now I got a taste of my, I guess, the team's medicine, and I got pranked this time. So, Louisa, why don't you explain what happened?
Well, as always, we were advertising at Walmart for our Schizophrenic Library Workshop again. So since we were advertising on a Monday, and Aayush was like, oh no, that's a work day. No one will come to Walmart. And it's going to be like super sad and no one will take your flyers. But as always, we went against common sense and went to Walmart. And surprisingly enough, we did pass out 100 flyers and got a couple more people to sign up. And when we told Aayush, he would not believe us, and he still don't believe not believe us because he is still salty.
No. Okay, you gotta understand. Okay, it's literally, this is on January, I think it was January January 3rd. Yeah, it's January 3rd. And like I'm like, hey, it's a working day afternoon. It's the first day after winter break has ended because most people are on work on Monday. So I'm like, who's gonna be coming to Walmart? And it's also like 20 degrees outside. So I'm like, obviously this isn't a good idea. We'll be wasting a lot of time. And then one of our team members, when they came back, pranked me, and they're like, hey man, so that was a huge failure. We only passed out 10 flyers in 2 hours. And I'm like, I'm not surprised. I told you so. And then he's like, it's a joke, by the way. We actually passed out 100. I didn't believe it, and I still don't believe it today. There's no way. There's actually no way.
He's just salty.
I'm not salty.
He was raging. He was just explaining to me, like, he was just explaining his logic. Like, he's like, how? There's no way they sold 100. Oh, you guys didn't even print 100. Like, they're just bluffing. He was just pissed.
No, okay.
Over to like get some winter supplies. Really think, oh, it might be another snowmageddon or something.
I don't know. I'm no, but they're at work though. It's a working day afternoon. That's what I was like. Okay, yeah, they're definitely not cutting. So I was extremely surprised, but I still don't. I'm surprised enough that I don't believe it. I'm never gonna believe it. And when they came back, they brought back like 40 flyers. So I'm like, oh yeah, they definitely didn't pass out 100. But then I guess they did.
Onto the bulk of today's podcast, we will be talking about the importance of CAD. Today we are joined by a very special guest from 11563 Robo-Wranglers, CADen. CADen, would you like to introduce yourself to the viewers?
My name is Caden Turner, as evidenced by the name tag I have. I come from like you said, 11563 Robo-Wranglers. Not really anything special to say. I'm just happy to be here.
We're happy to have you on. I hope you enjoy being on the podcast.
I will.
Yeah. So let's start it off with a little bit of information about the CAD sector of your team. So how many people are on your team that do CAD regularly?
Regularly, mostly just me. I do remember having Cloud occasionally coming on to help, but admittedly, it's mostly me doing most of the work.
And Aarush, why don't you talk about how you relate with that personally?
Feels like just pushing everything on your own, but I am glad to at least support the team in some way. You know, push everything forward, get everything ready for the notebook, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And Aarush over here, if you want to talk about how you do the bulk of the CAD.
Yeah, I also do the bulk of the CAD for our team. So, because like we only have a couple, we have like just like you guys. How many CADers do you guys have again?
Like basically just me and another person, a lot of minions.
Okay.
Yeah, so I started to learn a little CAD last week, so I'm trying to help Aarush so he doesn't like feel all alone and stuff. You might want to encourage other people to help you on CAD as well, so you can do cool stuff.
Yeah, it'd be nice to do one big team project before the whole thing ends, or at least get everybody's at least doing something. That's all I got to say on that whole front.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully your CAD you get more people to CAD, because CAD is extremely useful, right? You're seeing it in the real world all the time, where we're going to be using this CAD to develop things, for example, designs in the STEM sector. As a matter of fact, I was watching a YouTube video from Mark Rober, and he uses Fusion 360 to CAD all of his designs, so I thought that was pretty nifty.
I probably should try and look into that video myself, but yeah, it could be very useful in the real world, especially documenting 3D printing and more if we can find more uses for it.
All right, so what software do you use to CAD?
Mainly just Tinkercad. What do you use, Aayush?
We use Fusion 360, which is by Autodesk.
Yeah, I've been trying to get into that. I remember trying to get into that at one point since I realized a tad bit more sophisticated. Fortunately, that didn't turn out so well, so we're using Tinkercad for the time being.
I think Tinkercad is fine. And
Yeah.
Aarush, have you used Tinkercad?
Oh yeah, it's pretty like simple when you want to create like simple designs, and there's definitely use for it.
What was your experience like when you were trying to learn CAD for the first time?
I remember it was like at first another student volunteered, which they decided to eventually move to just building things manually. I remembering, do you know Mr. Vonneheim or Mr. V?
Sure. Who?
Basically, he's one of the teachers. He was actually introducing me to Tinkercad in the first place. He did a bunch of lessons, and I got the hang of things very quickly. So I decided to stay on that sector of things. It was at least fun knowing something that I could find a software where I could try and attempt to make basically anything in there. Which I am hoping to try out Autodesk one day, since, well, judging from what you guys said, looks pretty sophisticated.
It really is sophisticated. It allows you to, from what I've used it, there's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you learn everything, it becomes really, I guess, intuitive, and it becomes easier to use. But Aarush, why don't you talk about your technical problems with it?
Technical problems. Fusion or just like heavier CAD softwares. Technically, like when you're just running them, they often require pretty powerful like PCs, and generally speaking, it's kind of killing my computer. So yeah.
You got that potato that you're using as your computer?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Caden, where do you get your ideas for when you CAD? Okay.
Usually look through various media and various videos that tech companies put out. Well, I can't find any specific examples since they're mainly just things they're putting into the works right now. Well, I do think that, well, we could take a lot from pop culture and media to attempt to put into, the works in real life.
Yeah,
that's all
absolutely. Do you like look at other teams and see what their robot is, and then you try to make yours sort of based on that?
Of course, usually, I remember in the last few scrimmages, I always attempted to stay in the sidelines and, attempt to video everything. So we can usually analyze every robot and just attempt to see what worked and what didn't work.
Yeah, that's actually really good. That really allows for you to, I guess, make everything more efficient. Like, okay, yeah, we know this works and we know this doesn't work, instead of having to test the whole thing. Yeah, so absolutely, that's smart.
Yeah.
Also, Caden, how much of your robot is like, I guess, based on CAD?
Unfortunately, we did actually start making models of the robots very much later into the process. Usually, unfortunately, I wasn't able to make a model for what they would look like before we actually begin building them. So usually, I end up taking pictures of some of, well, it's in the works, and then make a final product while it's in production at least. Unfortunately, the team tries to output so much, and well, sometimes we may have to make new models overnight.
That's gonna be hard.
Yeah, but we could push through. I mean, as long as you have enough hope, dreams, or just try enough, you can at least accomplish something.
You
Do you
definitely
think CADing streamlines the building process? And if so, how does it streamline it?
Well, I believe it will streamline it by actually telling you which parts are placed where and actually giving you a full idea of what the robot may look like, which is the basic gist of it. But whenever using materials that are especially hard to take apart in real work, well, it can save you a lot of time, so you don't have to find out, oh, hey, this won't work, right when you just made something that would be really hard to take apart. Don't you guys agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's kind of like an unofficial manual for how to build your robot, and that's kind of helpful. Like because to the builders, obviously, they're referring to the CAD every time they're building, so it's pretty important.
Yeah. Also pretty good for documentation. Don't you guys agree? Especially for the portfolio and engineering notebook.
Yes, instead of having to like take a photo of your robot, you can just take a screen render the CAD. So it's really nice.
Yeah.
So I guess this is going on to a little. What are some of the difficulties that you've had with CAD?
Mainly, most of the stuff I had to make was basic, but most of the difficulties usually involve getting measurements to translate from CAD into the real world. Since we often have to use scalpers on just about everything.
Have you like used 3D printed or CNC'd like parts in your robot? Just out of curiosity.
Mainly nothing that we've actually 3D printed hasn't made into the robot yet, but I do remember we actually found this claw once, and well, we really liked said claw, so we actually reverse engineered it to try and rework it from CAD so comply with the rules of, well, FTC.
Also out of curiosity, what's like, I guess, the bulk of your robot made from? Like Rev, Tetrix, GoBuilder?
I remember. I think we use Tetrix most of the time, but also some Rev here and there. It's most a tad bit small of a mix, but I do think we mostly use Tetrix and Rev.
Yeah, what would you consider the most important element of the CAD process?
Most important elements? Well, what some people would say having a good idea of what you're wanting to build, since that. But I myself would believe having a good idea of how your build would work out in the real world. Since if you make a blueprint for a robot that's totally impossible to do in real life with the time and resources you guys have, well, that blueprint just fall into the dust. Well, maybe good to put it into your portfolio. I do believe it's always best to keep in mind what you can and can't do when making a blueprint for your next robot.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you do CAD, what do you find, like, just out of curiosity, what is the feature that you use the most?
The feature? I mean, mostly angles. I can't really say I use any features specifically. I do know that I just mostly just use a tad bit of everything, since mostly everything I do is more on the fly than anything.
Do you have any specific strategies you use to make the CADing process more efficient?
Any strategies? Fortunately, I don't really have any. Like I said, most of it's just on the fly. Although, whenever trying to recreate things from real life, I usually tend to take around 8 photos from different angles around something in real life whenever I'm attempting to recreate it in CAD, such as robot models, or that claw we made, or various other bits.
Aarush, what are some CAD strategies that you use? Since you also
Um, Generally speaking, you want to like think through your design before you like actually I guess CAD it out. Like you like often I might just look at my design for like 5 minutes, just like contemplating how a certain component or like sub-assembly or something like that should be attached to another robot, considering various different aspects such as strength or something like that. So you want to take your time with it.
Right, so that's 5 minutes of your life that just like staring at the design by orbiting.
Yeah, that's what CAD's usually, right, isn't it?
Yeah, I can honestly agree with you fully on that.
Okay. Do you consider, both of you, do you consider CAD as a necessary tool for the ultimate success in the robot game? Or if you don't, how much does it contribute to that success?
Well, I believe that it's one of the greatest parts you can actually do since, well, it helps you in basically all fronts of engineering, whether you're using a 3D printer to create new parts, or you're actually needing something to put into your portfolio when you don't have enough time to get some good photographs of the robots, or just something to preserve of it. Since, well, I believe it doesn't majorly contribute to something only, I just believe it majorly contributes to about everything within FTC. What do you guys think?
So for me, I think I'll take the more of a game manual zero stance where CAD isn't something I'd say is absolutely necessary. You could like make a competitive robot that you can make a very competitive robot without CAD. You just need to plan it out. Okay, you can do that with or without CAD, but CAD just makes it much more easier, and like it opens you to the realm of 3D printers and CNC and like so many other extra like I guess capabilities. It just helps a lot to CAD out your robot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Do you, and Aarush, by the way, I guess we should talk about, this was an earlier question, but I want to see what you think about this. What do you think is the most important element of CAD?
I think this is more specific to, yes, it's different use cases. I guess something I might consider is an important thing is how easy is it to implement? Because just for our use cases, I'd say we don't want designs that are, I guess, extremely hard to fine tune or build. We want simple designs that we can easily fine tune to very high degrees.
Right, and I guess in our CAD, I guess there's a lot of stuff that's very, I guess, intuitive to build. So I think is say thanks, by the way, to all the CADers who are watching, as well as Aarush and Caden. You guys are so cool. This is my rookie year in FTC, and when I first learned that I had to like learn CAD for the tryout, I was like, how am I gonna do this? It seemed so hard at first. Aarush, do you want to talk about that learning curve?
I would say CAD seems at like first glance a very like I guess hard like software or like I guess tool to learn. And I think a simple way is you often might just want to take like what Kay often does with his robot, where you just take a picture or something that in real life, and then you just like experiment with different tools, different methods, and just try to recreate that in CAD, and just do that multiple times. And I think like over time you can like learn how different I guess tools can be appropriately used.
So how can CAD help less experienced teams that aren't going to necessarily do 3DP or CNC a lot of parts?
Asking me or Caden?
Both of you.
I guess I'll let Caden go first.
I think I can help do think that I can help less experienced teams catch up with the more experienced ones that may have a tad bit more resources at their command. Since I also do kind of agree with the stance that Aayush put earlier, it can help, speed things up by a lot, which I do think less experienced teams do need to catch up with about everybody and get their foot within the FTC league. What do you think,
Aarush.
Aayush?
So, I think generally, like, if you're not going to like be 3D printing or CNC in a lot of components, CAD can still be useful. Even if you don't want to, if you take a completely different stance, it also helps with like your documentation. Okay, like rendering all those capabilities. It just makes you look more, I guess, professional and more experienced, like a top level team, And so it just helps with that, like, I guess, marketing aspect of it. And it also helps you, like, I guess, see how things will mesh and if there's any, like, future design problems. Like, oh, I CAD this out and it seems this design, it won't be big enough to, like, say, fit a ball or a cube in it. And we need to modify that. So, yeah.
And I guess the final question today is, I think for both of you, what are some good resources to learn CAD? Because when I first learned CAD, I just kind of Googled, how do I use Fusion 360? Because that was what they were asking for the tryouts. But I soon realized that was not really helpful, because that was more teaching me how to, not necessarily teaching me how to like make a robot. It's just kind of like, hey, you can create a cool 3D printed part. But the thing is, there's a lot of stuff in FTC that's not necessarily all just a bunch of 3D printed parts. So what are some good resources that you can recommend to rookie teams or rookie people who don't know CAD?
Well, I don't know any resources specifically, since most of everything I got was mainly from a mentor and digital lessons that Tinkercad taught me.
I would say just like YouTube it. Just search up on YouTube. There's like a couple, like lots of good channels, and you can just learn a lot just by watching a lot. And I think there's some guides such as Game Manual Zero that helps a lot when trying to learn CAD.
Yeah, and when I started learning CAD more and more, things started to just click more and more, and I realized that there was a lot of repetition in CAD, but they don't like. But the YouTube videos which I used, they didn't really talk about like importing stuff into like a Fusion, or in this case Tinkercad. They just talked about like, oh yeah, just create a sketch and then extrude the sketch to make a 3D printed part. So for my YouTube videos, I think that could have been more helpful, but GM0 would probably be a much better resource to use. Louisa, when did you learn CAD, or did you learn CAD at all?
Well, I do know a tiny bit of CAD, and I did learn a little bit of CAD last year from Mr. McCarthy, but that's the extent of my knowledge. I can CAD like a basic chassis, but that's it.
Right, and Aarush, can you just explain how you pronounce chassis, because this is extremely important.
Say it once, I'll say it twice, I'll say it a million times. It's a way of life, okay? If you want to pronounce it chassis, that is fine. Like, I respect that. That is completely and utterly fine. But you know what you can also do? Come join me and pronounce it as chassis. It is completely fine how you pronounce it. It's a way of life. These are things that you must respect as
I
respect
support the
each
chassis
other.
cult.
What?
Yeah, I am part of this whole chassis group. I say chassis. Louisa, is there a problem?
Yes, there is a problem. Chassis.
We
chassis.
respect your way of life. Just respect ours. Okay?
Yeah.
It's fine to pronounce it chassis. Even as a person who pronounces it as chassis. If you pronounce it as chassis, I will only say, hey, you can also pronounce it as chassis, but continue pronouncing it as chassis if you choose to do so. It is a way of life.
And I am subscribed to this way of life. Let it be known. Caden, would you like to join us?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Chassis gang.
Yeah. Oh my god,
Yeah.
And on that high note, I guess that's going to wrap up today's episode of FTC Feature. Is there any final things that you guys want to say before we start getting into the conclusion?
Respect others and their way of life, not just with chassis and chassis, both all. They might have different political opinions, religions, but respect them all.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. So I guess that's it to the viewers. Thank you all for staying. Thank you all for hanging out. If you want to subscribe to our channel, go ahead and do that. If you want to leave a like saying that you like this video, or a dislike that you didn't dislike this because we say chassis, that's fine. And if you have anything that you want to be featured on the future episodes, why don't you just leave the comment down below. We'll see you guys in the next episode. But before we leave off, Caden, why don't you leave us off with just a small piece of advice that you can give to FTC teams?
Oh, small piece of advice. Well, you'd hear it be repeated from everybody else. I do believe it's always good to basically document everything. Always look through every single picture you have and every single iteration. Always save basically everything for people entering notebooks are generally it's a collection of every just small bits of portfolio. So it's always good to at least save every single iteration you have on CAD so it could be used for documentation purposes.
And thank you for that's actually a really nice piece of advice because we document a lot of stuff, and I think documentation is great when you want to win these awards at the qualifiers or leagues. So I think that it's a very good piece of advice. And
sorry, mind if I add another thing? I'm mainly saying this because I have heard horror stories before where a notebook isn't completed properly and just a judge gets, well, stupidly mad to say the least. So I'm just saying to avoid that ever happening again.
Yes, hopefully we don't get, hopefully we don't make the judge stupidly mad at our qualifier. So that's about it. To the viewers, thank you, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.